Good afternoon, students. In last class, we discussed about the larynx, that is voice box. It is a structure, it is responsible for the production of the voice. And today class, we are going to discuss another important topic, that is that topic. It is responsible for the most of the our body functions, that is it provides energy, because the temporomandibular joint, you see here, these are all the chewing gums. I think all of you like very much, but don't chew now because COVID is on. Okay, here next, what is the, see here, this is also bubble, you like it, I think. Next, you see, today we are going to discuss the temporomandibular joint. It is the joint, it is responsible for the chewing, it is also responsible for the swallowing, and it makes the food like a bolus by the process of mastication or chewing. Okay, that is the most important function. And if you are putting anything, any rough or large particles in our mouth, before swallowing, you have to make it simple particles or small particles. Then only, and at the same time, it also mixes with the saliva, and there is a formation of bolus, and then only the digestive enzymes are able to act on the foodstuff and they digest the food. Because before that, we have to make it simple form or into small particles. That is the most important function of the temporomandibular joint and mastication. And here, like other joints, the temporomandibular joint is also having articular surfaces. That is, here there are two articular surfaces. One is the superior articular surface, and another one is the inferior articular surface. Here, the temporomandibular joint, the name itself self-explanatory. That is temporo, that is between the temporal bone, and mandibular, that is the another bone, that is the mandible. What you are seeing, this is the mandible. You see here, this is the mandible bone. Okay, and here the mandible, it is having different parts. This is the body of the mandible. This part is called ramus of the mandible. Ramus of the mandible. Again, the ramus, it is divided into two parts. That is the, it is having two processes. That is coronoid process. This is the coronoid process. This is the condyloid process. Here, our today's topic is temporomandibular joint, and this is the condyle or head of the mandible. Condyle or head of the mandible. It is taking part in the formation of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, you see here, this is the mandible, and this part is the body of the mandible. This is the ramus of the mandible. In between these two, there is an angle. This is the angle of the mandible. Angle of the mandible. This is the coronoid process. This is the condyloid process. This is the condyloid. This is the coronoid. The condyloid process is also called head of the mandible. Just below the head of the mandible, there is a narrow area that is called neck of the mandible. Neck of the mandible. Here you can see, this is the neck of the mandible, and this is the head of the mandible. Okay, after that, okay, this is the coronoid process, and this is the medial surface of the ramus of the mandible. This is the body, this is the medial surface, and this is the lateral surface. This is the alveolar border, this is the inferior border. This is also called body of the mandible. Body of the mandible. And here, these are all the different parts of, here you see, in the medial surface of the ramus of the mandible, there is one opening. This is called mandibular foramen. Mandibular foramen. Through this, the inferior alveolar nerve and vessels, they pass through the mandibular foramen, and they pass through the body of the mandible, and they supply to all the structures which are related with the mandible. Okay, this is the mandibular foramen. And here in the mandibular foramen, there is a small, in the medial side of this one, there is a small bony prolongation, tongue-like prolongation. Tongue-like prolongation. That is why this is called lingula. This is called the bony prolongation from the medial side of the mandibular foramen, that is tongue-like. That is why it is called lingula. That is why it is called lingula. Okay, these are all the different parts. And here you see, this is the external surface, and this is the internal surface or medial surface, and this is the outer surface or lateral surface or external surface. Okay, this is the called notch, mandibular notch or incisura. Okay, these are all the bones forming the lower art. This is the especially this is the part it is taking part in the formation of the today's topic, that is the temporomandibular joint. Temporomandibular, this is the head of the mandible. Next, the superior articular surface that is formed by, this is the, you see here, this is the base of the skull total, and within the base of the skull, this is the area, it is the for mandible, and this is called mandibular fossa. Mandibular fossa, this is the area it articulates with the head of the mandible, and you can see here, this is the mandibular fossa, and here it articulates like this, the mandible, then it forms the joint. This is the what you are seeing here, this is the temporomandibular joint. So this is the joint between the head of the mandible and the articular process or articular tubercle and mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. Okay, these are the bones that are taking part in the formation of the temporomandibular joint, TMJ. In short form, usually we use it as TMJ, temporomandibular joint. Okay, next, why you are supposed to know about the temporomandibular joint? What is the use? That is also very, very important, because there are many clinical conditions, especially for the dentists during road traffic accidents, and sometimes there may be due to degenerative changes of the temporomandibular joint, and it may produce pain along the muscles which are supporting the temporomandibular joint, or sometimes there is a fracture of the neck of the mandible. It may be intracapsular or extracapsular. Okay, or sometimes there may be a fracture of the body of the mandible or ramus of the mandible. Like that, there are so many clinical conditions. They comes under the facial-maxillary surgery. Okay, goes to the facial-maxillary surgery. That is why, and at the same time, the mandible, this is the only movable bone of the skull except the ossicles, ear ossicles, that is malleus, incus, stapes, miss. 3 small bones, they are present in the middle ear. Except those bones, this is the only movable. Mandible is the only movable bone, and this is the bone responsible for the mastication and sometimes speech and side-to-side movements. These are all different things we are going to discuss in detail. Okay, that is why we are going to study about the mandible. First, you see what is the type of the joint. First, if you want to discuss about any joint, first you must know which type of joint. Already you know that a classification of joints. Under the classification of joints, there are so many joints. That is, out of these, the synovial joint is one. And again, within the synovial joint, there are ball and socket variety, pivot variety. They are like that. There are different joints. And out of synovial joints, this is the condylar variety of synovial joint. Condylar variety of synovial joint. First, if you are discussing about any joint, first you have to say which type of joint, whether it is a synovial joint or fibrous joint or some other joint. Like that, here, today's our temporomandibular joint, this is the synovial joint, and subtype is condylar variety of synovial joint. Okay, clear. Next, coming to the bones forming the joint. What are the bones which are taking part in the formation of the temporomandibular joint? That is also very, very important. First, already I had shown that is above and below. Above, what are the bones? That is articular tubercle or eminence, and anterior part of the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. Articular tubercle or eminence and mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. Okay, you see here. This is the exactly joint. This is the upper articular surface. Okay, see here. This is the mandibular fossa of temporal bone, and this part is called articular tubercle or bony prominence or eminence. Okay, this is the articular tubercle or eminence. That is the upper articular surface. Next, below, it is formed by head or condyle of the mandible. The head is also called condyle because another one is the coronoid process and condyloid process we call it, because this is the head. That is why it is called also head, and next is the condyle and of the mandible. What is the length of the mandible and what is the breadth of the mandible, the head of the mandible? That is 20 meters in transverse diameter. See, transverse diameter is more. Transverse diameter is more when compared with the anteroposterior diameter. Anteroposterior diameter, that is only 10 millimeters. The transverse diameter is, that is 20 millimeters. 20 millimeters. The articular surfaces are covered with the fibrocartilage. Fibro, because it is a synovial joint, and joint cavity is divided into upper and lower parts by the intra-articular disc. Already we have seen some joints. There is especially the sternoclavicular joint. In the sternoclavicular joint also there is a one fibro cartilaginous partition within the joint. It divides the cavity into two parts, that is medial and lateral parts. Here also there is another special arrangement, that is in the form of intra-articular disc. Intra-articular disc, it is made up of fibrocartilage. It is made up of fibrocartilage. With the help of this intra-articular disc, the temporomandibular joint, it is divided into two parts, that is the upper part and lower part. Upper part we call it as menisco-temporal compartment. Why it is called menisco intra-articular disc? We also call it as meniscus also. You can call it as meniscus, just like our knee joint. Already we have seen the meniscus on the knee joint. Just like that, here this is called upper menisco-temporal compartment. That is above upper part of the joint cavity above the intra-articular disc. We call it as upper menisco-temporal compartment and lower menisco-mandibular compartment. Menisco-mandibular compartment. In between the temporal bone and the meniscus or intra-articular disc, we call it as menisco-temporal compartment, and below we call it as menisco-mandibular compartment. I show you. Okay, you see here. This is the intra-articular disc. It divides the joint. This is totally the joint cavity. It divides the joint cavity into two parts. The upper part is the menisco-temporal compartment, and lower part is the menisco-mandibular compartment. And this is the intra-articular disc. This is also called meniscus. It is also called meniscus, just like our knee joint. Okay. Next, these are the bones. They are taking part in the formation of the joint. That is the type of the joint. That is the synovial joint, and subtype is the condylar variety. Condylar variety of synovial joint. What are the bones forming? Articular eminence or articular tubercle, that is above, and mandibular fossa. Articular tubercle and mandibular fossa above, and head of the condyle, or condyle of the mandible below. That is the length of the condyle is less than transverse diameter of the head of the mandible. Okay, these are the points. And here within the joint there is one partition that is called intra-articular disc. Intra-articular disc. It is made up of fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage, and it divides the joint cavity into two parts. That is upper menisco-temporal compartment, lower menisco-mandibular compartments. Yes, it's clear. Next, you see, this is the exactly what is the joint. This is the articular tubercle. It is called eminence or articular tubercle. And here, this is the head of the mandible. Okay, and this is the mandibular fossa. Mandibular fossa. Okay, in between these two, this is the joint. Exact location of the joint. Next, here, this is the arrangement of the orientation of the condyle or head of the mandible. This is the transverse axis. This is the vertical axis. Okay, anteroposterior, and this is the transverse. Here, exactly, it is not located, it is obliquely. The head of the mandible, it is directed backwards and medially. Backwards and medially. The axis of the, or angle of this head of the mandible, it is directed backwards and medially. If you draw a arc, or if you draw a circle to meet the both the articular, there are two heads on both sides, that is right and left side. If you draw a line and it makes a circle, the circle, the arc of the circle, it passes just anterior along the anterior margin of the foramina magnum. This is the relation between the foramina magnum and the head of the mandible. Okay. Next, you see, this is the exactly joint. This is the articular cartilage. This is the intra-articular disc. This is also another articular cartilage. Here, this is the different parts of the joint. Here you can see here, this is the mandible, head of the mandible, and this is the fossa, and here this is the intra-articular disc, and this is the capsule we discussed. Yeah? Okay, next, what are the structures which are related with this temporomandibular joint? Already we have seen what is the type of the joint and what are the bones taking part in the formation of the joint, and what are the with the help of the intra-articular disc, it is divided into two compartments. Now you see about the ligaments. What are the ligaments? If you already know, that is any joint, it must be supported by some structures, that is in the form of muscles or ligaments. Okay, like that here also, it is a temporomandibular joint. It is supported by ligaments. That is, first one is the capsular ligament with the synovial membrane and articular disc, already you had seen, and lateral or temporomandibular ligament. And there are two accessory ligaments, that is sphenomandibular and stylomandibular ligaments. These are all the ligaments, 5 ligaments which are related with the temporomandibular joint. Out of these 5, 2, that is 2 are the accessory ligaments and 3 are the real or original ligaments. They are supporting, actually they are supporting the joint. Okay, first you see in detail about each ligament. First you see about the capsular ligament. Capsular ligament, it envelops the joint and presents the following attachments. Okay, where it is attached. So here the capsule means it totally seals the joint on all the sides. All the sides the joint is sealed. It covers all the joint. That is what are the different attachments of the capsular ligament. And here above the articular tubercle in front, squamotympanic fissure behind. Here what is the squamotympanic? Squamo means squamous part of the temporal bone. Tympanic means tympanic part of the temporal bone. In between the squamous part and temporal tympanic part, there is one fissure or one groove, joint like structure, that is fissure, that is called squamotympanic fissure. Squamotympanic fissure behind, and periphery of the articular fossa between them. Periphery of the articular fossa. And below it is attached to the around the neck of the mandible. Below it is attached to the around the neck of the mandible. And in front it blends with the insertion of the lateral pterygoid muscle. Here the lateral pterygoid muscle, it is having very close relation with this temporomandibular joint, especially the capsule. We discuss later. Okay, what is that? Its importance, all these things. Next, coming to the articular disc. Here, this articular disc, it is very, very important structure. It is made up of fibrocartilage. Okay, and it is a oval-shaped plate. Oval shape, not a flat or something. It is oval shape. And morphologically, the disc represents the degenerated primitive insertion of lateral pterygoid muscle. That is why the articular disc, it is very, very important. Actually, if you see the lateral pterygoid muscle, actually it gets inserted to in the joint capsule. Okay, because as the generations advances and there is a degeneration of this primitive insertion, this part of the intracapsular part of the lateral pterygoid is remained as a intra-articular disc, and the extracapsular part, it continues as the muscle. Okay, that is the importance of the intra-articular disc. And here the intra-articular disc, it is divided into 5 parts. Actually, this intra-articular disc, it is divided into 5 parts. That is, first one is the anterior extension. Next, this is the anterior thick band, and this is the intermediate zone, and this is the posterior thick band, and this is the posterior bilaminar area. I show you. Okay, you see here. This is the intra-articular disc. This is the anterior part. This is the anterior extension. This is the anterior thick band. This is the intermediate zone, and this is the posterior thick band, and this is the posterior bilaminar area. Here, why it is called bilaminar? Here, the posterior part of the intra-articular disc divides into 2 parts. That is, one goes up and it attaches to the squamotympanic fissure, and another lamina, it goes down and it attaches to the neck of the mandible. neck of the mandible. Okay, this is the intra-articular disc and 5 parts of the intra-articular disc. It is made up of fibrocartilage. Okay, here why there are thick bands, anterior and thick bands. Here these are the points where while moving the head of the mandible, it is responsible for the change of direction of movements. That is why there are thick bands. Here it is there is no lining over this articular disc. Only the synovial membrane lines only the capsular ligament. Synovial membrane of the temporomandibular joint, it lines only the capsular ligament. It is not lining the articular surfaces or intra-articular disc. It is not lining the articular surfaces or intra-articular disc. The synovial membrane lines only the capsule of the joint. Here, capsule of the, you see here. This is green color, this is the capsule, and this part only lined by synovial membrane, and it produces synovial fluid. Here, once there is a production of this synovial fluid, and it is absorbed by the articular disc. Here, the articular disc, it is like a sponge. It is like a sponge. If you keep the sponge in the water or some fluid, what happens? It absorbs the fluid. Whenever you squeeze, it releases. Because of this reason, if there is a movement of this head of the mandible, it produces pressure over the intra-articular disc, and it causes squeezing of the intra-articular disc. There is a release of this lubricating material, and it facilitates the movements. Because of this reason, it acts like a weeping lubricant. Weeping means crying. Whenever you press, it releases the fluid, and that is why it is called weeping. It acts like a weeping lubricant. That is the intra-articular disc. Next, lateral or temporomandibular ligament. This is another ligament that is it is in the lateral part, and it blends with the lateral part of the fibrous capsule. It is not a separate, actually, it is not a separate ligament. It blends with the capsule of the temporomandibular joint. It extends from the downwards. Actually, it is the direction of the lateral ligament. It is downwards and backwards. Okay, it starts from the above. It is attached to the tubercle of the root of the zygoma and lateral surface of the posterior margin of the neck of the man. In between these two, there is a ligament that is called, you see here, this is the zygomatic bone, and this is the neck of the mandible. In between these two, this is the ligament, this is the lateral ligament, or this is also called temporomandibular ligament. Lateral ligament or temporomandibular ligament, and it supports the joint. Next, you see other ligaments, that is accessory ligaments. There are two accessory ligaments. That is, one is the sphenomandibular, another one is the stylomandibular. Sphenomandibular and stylomandibular. The name itself is indicating one is the spheno, from the sphenoid bone to the mandible, and another one is the styloid process to the mandible. Okay, which part of the sphenoid bone? Especially the spine of the sphenoid bone. Spine of the sphenoid bone. Above it is attached to the spine of the sphenoid bone, and below it is attached to the lingula of the mandible. Lingula, you see here. This is the lingula. A small bony projection here. This is called lingula. Okay, at the level of the mandibular foramen, and above it is coming from the spine of the sphenoid. Spine of the sphenoid bone. From the spine of the sphenoid bone up to the lingula of the mandible, there is one fibrous band that is nothing but the sphenomandibular ligament. Here, developmentally, this sphenomandibular ligament, it is very important, because already you know in the Meckel's cartilage, that is from the Meckel's cartilage, the development of some structures, especially malleus and incus and mandible. Body, especially body of the mandible, these are all developed from the Meckel's cartilage. Here, the sphenomandibular ligament, it is nothing but the remnant of the fibrous covering or fibrous covering of the Meckel's cartilage. It remains as the sphenomandibular ligament. Sphenomandibular ligament. Here, what is the importance of this sphenomandibular ligament? Because it is a medial relation to the temporomandibular joint, And here this ligament, it is pierced by some important structures, and it is also related with the many structures which are related with the joint. Because of this reason, the sphenomandibular ligament, it is very, very important. Next, come to the stylomandibular ligament. Stylomandibular, from the styloid process, especially tip and some part of the upper part of the tip of the styloid process up to the angle of the mandible. It is formed by the thickening of the deep cervical fascia. Deep cervical fascia is thickened at this area, and it is forming like a ligament, that is from the tip and tip of the, you see, styloid process. Okay, in this bone there is no styloid process. Okay, from the tip and some part, upper part of the styloid process to the mandible, from here up to here, that is the angle of the mandible. Angle of the mandible, like this, there is a one ligament, that is nothing but the thickening of the deep cervical fascia. Thickening of the deep cervical fascia, we call it as stylomandibular. From the styloid process to the angle of the mandible, that is a stylomandibular ligament. Okay, stylomandibular ligament. Here you can see two ligaments. This is the spine of the sphenoid bone, and this is the lingula. This is the side. This is the mandibular foramen, and here this is the lingula, bony prolongation from the medial side of the mandibular foramen. Here, in between these two, there is a ligament. This is the sphenomandibular ligament. It is nothing but the remnant of the fibrous capsule of the Meckel's cartilage. Remnant of the fibrous capsule of the Meckel's cartilage. It is forming medial relation to the temporomandibular joint. Next, you see another ligament. This is the stylomandibular. It is taking above. It is attached to the tip of the styloid process and some upper part of the styloid process, and below it is attached to the angle of the mandible. It is the posterior part of the angle of the mandible. In between these two, there is another ligament. This is the stylomandibular ligament. Here, the stylomandibular ligament, it is nothing but the thickened deep fascia of the cervical, or deep cervical fascia, and it divides the that is two parts. That is a parotid area from the submandibular area. Okay, in between these two, from the below it is a submandibular, above it is a parotid. Okay, that is the importance of the accessory ligaments, that is stylomandibular and sphenomandibular ligaments. Okay, next, relations. What are the joint relations? Okay, already we discussed what is the type of the joint, what are the articular surfaces which are taking part in the formation of the joint, and what are the ligaments. Okay, and what are the compartments of the joint. Then we come to the what are the relations of the joint. The relations of the joint, it is very, very important, because if you want to approach the temporomandibular joint during surgeries, or if you want to have an idea what is the actual damage, where the damage occurred, if you want to know, you must have an idea about what are the structures which are related with the temporomandibular joint. That is, what are the anterior relations are in front, or what are the posterior relations are behind, and what are the medial relations, what are the lateral relations, what are the important structures, is there any muscles or any nerves or blood vessels, like that you must know. Then only you are able to assess properly the condition of the patient. And if you want to approach, if you want to perform any surgeries over the temporomandibular joint, or if they need related with the ramus of the mandible or neck of the mandible, you must have an idea about what are the structures in this area. Because of this reason, you must know what are the relations of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, first you see what are the front relations. That is lateral pterygoid, temporalis, and mesenteric vessels and nerve. Mesenteric vessels and nerve. In short form, you just remember MLT. Okay, medical lab technical. Okay, just short form you remember MLT. That is M is mesenteric vessels and nerve, L is lateral pterygoid, and T is temporalis. In front MLT, and behind PAS, P-A-S. P is parotid gland, S is next, A is auriculotemporal nerve, and S is superficial temporal vessels, and E is external acoustic meatus. External acoustic meatus. These are all the structures which are present in the behind or back of the temporomandibular joint, that is in the form of pes. You just remember pes. Behind pes, in front MLT. Okay, next laterally it is subcutaneous. You see here, laterally it is only you can feel your own temporomandibular joint by moving, and it is just lateral subcutaneous. Only thing is there is a skin and some fascia and lateral ligament is there. Lateral ligament, that is the temporomandibular ligament. Okay, that is the subcutaneous. Next, medial relations are very, very important because there are many important structures medial to the temporomandibular joint. That is, you just remember as a class. Okay, here the C is chorda tympani nerve, and L is lateral pterygoid, and A is auriculotemporal nerve. And you may have a doubt. Why already told auriculotemporal nerve is in the behind or posterior relation, because the auriculotemporal nerve, it comes like this from posterior to lateral, medial, from posterior to medial, it goes like this. That is why it is having both the relations, that is behind and medial relations. Okay, that is the auriculotemporal nerve. And one S is a sphenomandibular ligament, another S is the spine of the sphenoid. Spine of the sphenoid. The spine of the sphenoid above, and continuation of this one is sphenomandibular ligament. Like this, there are different structures which are having medial relation with the temporomandibular joint. That is MLT in front, and the face behind, and laterally, laterally subcutaneous, medially, that is a class. That is a C is nothing but the chorda tympani nerve, and L is lateral pterygoid, and A is auriculotemporal nerve, and S is the spine of the sphenoid and the sphenomandibular nerve. Okay, these are all the relations: anterior, posterior, lateral, and medial. Next, above the floor of the cranial fossa, especially the middle cranial fossa. Floor of the middle cranial fossa, it is just separated by a thin plate of floor of the middle cranial fossa. Just above the temporomandibular joint, there is a middle cranial fossa. In between the middle cranial fossa and the temporomandibular joint, there is a thin plate of bone. Thin plate of bone. These are all the relations of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, whenever you want to approach the temporomandibular joint, you have to keep all these structures in mind. Okay, that is why this is the relations of the temporomandibular joint, especially for the maxillofacial surgeons, dental surgeons, but are if the cancer surgeons, especially people who are performing the surgeries over the oral cancers or carcinoma of the neck or some other clinical conditions. They must have an idea about the all of the different structures which are having relation with the temporomandibular joint. Next, these are all they see here. This is the lateral one, this is the lateral ligament, and it is subcutaneous. And above, this is the middle cranial fossa. Just above this is the middle cranial fossa. In between this joint and the middle cranial fossa, there is a thin plate of bone, and these are all the medial relations. Medial relations, that is lateral pterygoid and middle meningeal artery, auriculotemporal nerve, chorda tympani nerve. This is the spine of the sphenoid, and this is the sphenomandibular ligament. Sphenomandibular, from the tip of the spine of the sphenoid bone up to the lingula of the mandible. Lingula of the, this is the mandibular foramen. Through this inferior alveolar nerve and blood vessels, they pass into the substance of the mandible. And here, this is the sphenomandibular ligament. Sphenomandibular ligament. Okay, these are all the medial relations of this temporomandibular joint. And here, this is the capsule of the joint, and this part only lined by synovial membrane, only capsule, not this part, and all these area they are free from synovial lining. Only capsule is lining the internal inside of the capsule is lined by the synovial membrane. Okay, and these are the relations. You see, this is the lateral ligament. This is the lateral ligament, and this is the capsular ligament. And posterior relations are superficial temporal and auriculotemporal nerve. Okay, and this is the external acoustic meatus. This is the scamotympanic fissure. Scamotympanic fissure. Okay, these are all the relations. Next, coming to the arterial supply. What are the blood vessels which are supplying to the temporomandibular joint? That is superficial temporal artery branches and maxillary artery branches. Superficial temporal artery and maxillary artery branches, they are supplying to the temporomandibular joint. And it also receives a small branches from the blood vessels which are supplying to the lateral pterygoid muscle. Lateral pterygoid muscle, the blood vessels which are supplying to the lateral pterygoid muscle, they are also supplying to the, they are also giving small branches to the temporomandibular joint. Okay, next coming to the nerve supply. What are the nerves which are supplying to the temporomandibular joint? That is, the articular tissue and dense part of the articular disc have no nerve supply. There is no intra-articular structures, they are not supplied by the nerves. And the nerves, which is auriculotemporal nerve and mesenteric nerve. Auriculotemporal nerve and mesenteric nerve. Mesenteric nerve, it is nothing but the branch from the mandibular nerve. These are two nerves which are supplying to the temporomandibular joint. And here the capsule, lateral ligament, retroarticular tissue contains mechanoreceptors and nociceptors. The mechanoreceptors and nociceptors are very important because they sense the position of the joint. They sense the position of the joint and they maintain the movements of the joint. Okay, that is the nerve supply to the temporomandibular joint. Next, coming to the, what are the different movements, possible movements of the temporomandibular joint? That is, the first one is the protrusion. Protrusion means like this, moving the mandible forwards. Moving mandible forwards, that is like this, in front. Okay, that is the protrusion. And here, what are the muscles responsible for the production of protrusion? That is lateral and medial pterygoid muscles. Medial and lateral pterygoid muscles of both sides. They are responsible for the protrusion of the mandible. Protrusion of the mandible. It is with the help of the lateral and medial pterygoids of both the sides. Simultaneously, they contract and they protrude the mandible in front. Okay, that is the first movement. Next is the retraction. Retraction, once you protrude it, you should not keep like this. Then you have to retract. The retraction is with the help of the posterior fibers of the temporalis. That is a normal retraction. If there is a forcible retraction, that is with the help of the muscles, that is a digastric and suprahyoid muscles. They help mylohyoid and thyroid muscles. They are helpful for this retraction. Okay, that is not thyroid, sorry, mylohyoid muscle is helpful for the, and geniohyoid and mylohyoid and digastric muscles. These muscles, they are helpful for the forcible retraction. Forcible retraction. The normal retraction is with the help of the temporalis, especially the posterior fibers of the temporalis muscle. Posterior fibers of the what is these muscles I show you? Okay. Next, depression, that is with the help of the lateral pterygoid, geniohyoid, mylohyoid, and digastric. That is in the form of, that is a depression. Normal depression, that is with the lateral pterygoid, geniohyoid, mylohyoid, and digastric muscles. That is here, the depression of the mandible, it is very important movement because with the help of the this lateral pterygoid, first it is having three phases for the depression. Okay, if you want to depress the mandible, there must be three phases. First, the lateral pterygoid muscle contracts. Lateral pterygoid muscle contract and it rolls. It rotates the head of the mandible like this. Head of the mandible like this. Then again these muscles they contract. That is the geniohyoid, mylohyoid, and again it glides or rolls. The joint within the joint it rolls. That is especially the infra supra compartment. Supra it is a temporomeniscal compartment. Okay, upper part of the temporomandibular joint it moves, and again the head rotates, and again it moves. Like this, there is a coordination of the movements. They produce the depression. Next, elevation. This is the help of the masseter, temporalis, and medial pterygoid. Here, the elevation movement it is very important because the muscles which are producing the elevation, they are acting against the gravity. Because of this reason, they are producing impressions on the attachment. If you see here, this is the lateral surface of the mandible, and especially this is the area. It is giving attachment to the medial surface and lateral surface. It is probably here is giving attachment to the that is masseter muscle, and above this is the coronoid process. It is providing attachment to the insertion to the temporalis, and medial side it is providing attachment to the medial pterygoid. All these muscles, they are anti-gravity muscles. They have to elevate. They work against the gravity. Because of this reason, at the site of insertion of all these muscles, they are producing depressions and elevations. That is irregular surfaces because of the traction force. Because of the traction force. That is the important of this elevation. Next, another movement is the side-to-side movement. Side-to-side movement. That is like this. If you want to move side to side, what are the muscles? That is the medial and lateral pterygoid muscles contract alternately. One side muscles contract and the other side relax. Like this, both the sides alternately they contract and they produce the side to side movements. Side to side movements. Okay, these are all the movements possible at the temporomandibular joint. That is protrusion, retraction, depression, elevation, and side to side movements. Okay, you see, this is the status of the head of the mandible within the joint. This is the articular disc, and while protruding or depression movements, first it rotates, then it glides, again it rotates. Like this, this is the movement. And next, coming to the what are the muscles which are having relation with the temporomandibular joint. That is lateral pterygoid, medial pterygoid, temporalis and masseter. Temporalis and masseter. Okay, you see, first you see about the temporalis. This is the temporalis muscle. It is taking origin from the temporal fossa. Below the infratemporal line, it is taking origin and it gets inserted to the coronoid process of the mandible. Coronoid process of the mandible, that is especially deep and anterior border and medial surface of the coronoid process of the mandible. The most important functions of this temporalis is elevation, retraction, and side to side movements. Okay, these are the movements with the help of the temporalis. Next is muscle is the masseter. Masseter muscle. Here this is the masseter muscle. Again, it is masseter muscle. It is having three parts. That is a superficial part, middle part, and deep part. The superficial part of the masseter muscle, it takes origin from the zygomatic arch. This part is called, you see here, this is called zygomatic arch. Zygomatic arch. From the zygomatic arch, the masseter takes origin, especially the superficial fibers of the masseter. It takes origin from the anterior 2/3 of the lower part of the zygomatic arch, and they are running downwards and backwards, and they are making 45 degrees angle, and they are inserted to the lower part of the angle of the outer surface of the mandible. And middle fibers, they are taking origin from the posterior 1/3 of the lower border and anterior 2/3 of the inner border of the inner surface of the mandible. This zygomatic arch, and they are vertically they are running down and they are inserting to the middle part of the lateral surface. Middle part of the lateral surface of the mandible, and another deep fibers, they are taking origin from the inner surface of the zygomatic arch. They are also inserted to the ramus of the mandible on the upper part of the lateral surface of the mandible. Upper surface, this area. Okay, these are the three parts of the masseter. And here, what are the functions or actions of the masseter? That is elevation, protraction, and retraction. These are the movements possible with the help of the masseter. Next, range of movements of the mandible. That is, the maximum opening of the jaw is about 50 to 60 millimeters. If you open the mouth, maximum is 50 to 60 millimeters. The maximum is 50 to 60 millimeters. However, the functional range, normally we are opening up to 40 millimeters, out of which 25 millimeters opening takes place at the rotation of the, and remaining 15 millimeters by the anterior displacement or sliding of the this temporomandibular joint. The maximum ranges of protrusion, that is, and lateral displacement. That is protrusion and lateral displacements. that is 10 millimeters each. 10 millimeters each. Next, what are the factors maintaining the stability of the joint? That is very, very important. That is, first you take about the bones. What are the bones? And what are the ligaments? And what are the muscles? They are providing stability to the joint. Any joint, it must be stabilized. Okay. For this purpose, what are the structures which are providing stability to the joint? Next, first one is the forward displacement is prevented by articular tubercles, and backward displacement is prevented by postglenoid tubercles. Postglenoid tubercles. This is the articular tubercle and this is the postglenoid tubercle. Okay, these are the structures that are preventing the anterior and posterior displacement of the joint. Next is the ligament. What are the ligaments? That is temporomandibular joint prevents the backward displacement. Already we had seen temporomandibular joint. And muscles, that is protrusion is prevented by tension of the temporalis and retraction by lateral pterygoid. That is, the temporalis, it prevents the protrusion of the and temporomandibular, that is mandible. Retraction is prevented by the lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, here these are the factors which are maintaining the stability of the joint. Next is the why you are supposed to know about the temporomandibular joint. What are the clinical conditions which are related with the temporomandibular joint? That is, first one is the displacement. That is, most common displacement of the temporomandibular joint is the forward displacement. Forward displacement by sudden spasm of the lateral pterygoid muscle while anning or due to some spasm of this lateral pterygoid muscle. Because of the weakness of the capsular ligament and some other supporting ligaments, there is a chances for the sliding of this head of the mandible below this anterior tubercle or articular eminence, and it produces displacement of the joint. That is the, you see here. Okay, this is the normal position of the head of the mandible, and here it is the displaced. Okay, it is a displaced joint. Okay, if there is a displacement, how to reduce the temporomandibular joint displacement? This is also very, very important clinically, because here otherwise it may cause stretching of the joint and blood vessels surrounding this area. And if you want to stretch, if you want to reduce this temporomandibular joint, anterior displacement of the temporomandibular joint, first you have to keep two thumbs or the molar and premolar teeth within the mouth with the help of some cotton. Okay, you have to take sterile precautions. Then you have to put your thumbs into the mouth, and you have to elevate you have to press these thumbs to apply force to dislodge this head of the mandible from this fossa. Then you have to stretch this. Then you have to elevate this body of this part of the mandible. Then you push backwards. Then it is the technique routinely used in clinical practice for the reduction of the temporomandibular joint. Okay, in some individuals, it is most common because of the weakness of the ligaments and muscles which are supporting the joint. Frequent displacements are possible. Sometimes the patient himself, he may reduce this displacement, just like our shoulder joint replacement. And if you want to support this joint displacement, you have to apply this brace, okay, to support the joint for some weeks or some days. Okay, next, what are the common fractures of the mandible? What are the sites for the fracture of the mandible? The fracture of the mandible, mandible is the most common bone fractured during road traffic accidents, especially. I had seen one patient, he's going by bike and he's going down. Okay, another person is coming up. There is a turning. Suddenly, he's Sunday, he drank alcohol, under effect of alcohol. Suddenly, there is a collision of two bikes. The head of the opposite individual is hit here, and he developed fracture of all the bones of the face, including mandible, and the neck of the mandible also fractured, and many fractures. And it is fixed with the titanium plates. There are so many techniques. Maxillofacial surgeries, they take care. And here again, sometimes the fracture of the mandibular, especially that is intracapsular, is also possible. Intracapsular also possible, or extracapsular also possible. and whatever it may be, after surgery, what they do, they fix the mandible with the maxilla. They fix the mandible with the maxilla to immobilize the bones. Wiring. They did wiring with the these two, and they are for 6 weeks or 4 weeks like that, and they give feeding. You may have doubt how you will take the food. They put some tube, rails tube. Through that tube only you have to give feeding to the patient. Okay, that is the fracture of the mandible or neck, especially intracapsular or extracapsular. And these are all the different fractures of the mandibles we go through. Next, another important thing, that is the mandibular lockjaw. Lockjaw of the mandible. This is the most common clinical condition in tetany. In tetany, that is the locking of the, especially the masseter muscle, severe contraction of the masseter muscle. The person is unable to open his mouth. Unable to open his mouth. But that is because of the severe contraction of the masseter muscle. That is the other important thing. And next is the temporomandibular joint. Temporomandibular joint syndrome. That is sometimes without any injury. Sometimes there may be chances for the degenerative changes within the temporomandibular joint, and it may produce irritation of the surrounding structures, muscles. Especially suppose if there is irritation of the muscle, that is the masseter muscle, there is a pain in the face. And if there is irritation of the temporalis muscle, it produces pain over the temporal region. Okay. And if there is irritation of this pterygoid muscles, it may produce in the back, neck and some other areas. There is a infratemporal region, there is a pain. Okay, like that. This temporomandibular syndrome. It is more common in adults and adolescents. Okay, these are all the clinical conditions which are related with the temporomandibular joint. Here, another important thing, the close to this posterior part of the temporomandibular joint, there is a facial nerve that is coming from this foramen, a small foramen, stylomastoid foramen, that is just close to this temporomandibular joint. Because during surgeries, you must be very careful with the facial nerve. Okay, these are all the clinical conditions which are related with the temporomandibular joint. Next, the muscles which are the muscles of mastication. We discussed briefly about these muscles. That is medial pterygoid, lateral pterygoid. Lateral pterygoid is a key muscle. It is very, very important muscle. If you want to approach the infratemporal fossa, you must have an idea about the lateral pterygoid muscle. What are the relations of the lateral pterygoid? What are the structures medial to the lateral pterygoid? What are the structures lateral to the lateral pterygoid? And the superior and inferior relations of the lateral pterygoid muscles. First, if you take medial pterygoid. The medial pterygoid muscle, it takes origin from the medial part of the pterygoid plates. There are two pterygoid plates, that is medial and lateral pterygoid plates. Here, these are the two medial and lateral pterygoid plates. This lateral pterygoid, medial surface of the lateral pterygoid plate and tuberosity of the maxilla, they are giving origin to the medial pterygoid, and it is inserted to the medial surface of the ramus of the mandible. Medial surface of this is the site for the insertion of the medial pterygoid. Okay, it is nerve supply. It is by the direct branch from the mandibular nerve. The next is the lateral pterygoid muscle. It takes origin from the lateral surface of the lateral pterygoid and infratemporal surface of the lateral wing of the sphenoid. And it is inserted to the, here it is it goes and it is inserted to the, there is one important area here at the neck of the mandible. There is a small depression. This is called pterygoid fovea. Pterygoid fovea. This is the site for the insertion of the lateral pterygoid muscle. It also inserts to the capsule of the temporomandibular joint. Capsule of the temporomandibular joint. Already you know that is the intra-articular disc. It is nothing but the degenerated, morphologically degenerated part of this lateral pterygoid muscle. Okay, and next is also supplied by the mandibular nerve. And next is the temporalis muscle. It takes origin from the infratemporal, this temporal fossa below the infratemporal line, and it gets inserted to this coronoid process. This is the coronoid process, tip, anterior border, medial surface, and some part of the posterior border of the coronoid process. And here, that is the temporalis. Next, masseter muscle. This is the muscle taking, or already we discussed, that is taking origin from the zygomatic arch. And it is inserted to the angle of the mandible at the junction of the ramus and body of the mandible. Okay, this is the site for the insertion of the masseter muscle, and medially this is the site for the medial pterygoid, and temporalis is here, and lateral pterygoid is at the pterygoid fovea. Pterygoid fovea. This is the site for the pterygoid fovea, a small depression in the neck of the mandible. Okay, these are all the muscles which are taking part in the mastication process. That is why they are called muscles of mastication. This is also very, very important. Next, coming to the, these are all the muscles. Next, another important small topic, that is pterygoid venous plexus. Clinically, this pterygoid venous plexus is very, very important, because the location of the pterygoid venous plexus is very, very important. It is playing most important role in spreading of infections from the face to the different parts of the face, or into the cranial, intracranial, that is a dural venous sinuses. Dural venous sinuses. That is why this pterygoid venous plexus, it is very, very important. What is the location of the pterygoid venous plexus? First, it is formed between the lateral pterygoid and temporalis, in between the two pterygoid muscles. You see here, this is the lateral pterygoid, and this is the medial pterygoid. In between these two muscles, there is a venous plexus, and another muscle, that is the temporalis, in between the temporalis and the lateral pterygoid. Okay, that is the site for the formation of pterygoid venous plexus. Next, formation, how it is forming. Okay, what are the tributaries which are taking part in the formation of the pterygoid venous plexus? That is spino-palatine, deep temporal, pterygoid, mesenteric, buccal, alveolar, greater palatine, and middle meningeal veins, and branches from the inferior ophthalmic vein. These are all the tributaries. They are taking part in the formation of the pterygoid venous plexus. You see here, this is the pterygoid venous plexus. These are all the veins. They are having connection with the pterygoid venous plexus. Because of this reason, this pterygoid venous plexus is very, very important. You see here, this is the communicated with the cavernous sinus through the emissary veins, and here this deep facial vein, and this is the common facial vein to communicate with the cavernous sinus through the deep facial vein. Already you know that is a dangerous area of the face. Dangerous area of the face. Why it is called dangerous area of the face? If there is an infection in this area, this infection may spread from the face to the pterygoid venous plexus. Through the pterygoid venous plexus, the infection may spread into the cavernous sinus, and it may produce a cavernous sinus venous thrombosis. Cavernous CSVT or CVT, call it is. Okay, cavernous sinus thrombosis. That is why this pterygoid venous plexus is very, very important. It also communicated with the maxillary vein, suprafacial temporal vein, and through this vein also it may communicate with the sigmoid sinus and some other sinuses of the dural venous sinus. That is why this pterygoid venous plexus, it is clinically, it is very, very important. Whenever there is an accident, or due to penetrating injuries, or due to formation of some abscess, and there is a chances for the spreading of this infection through the connections of the dural venous, that is cavernous sinus or some other sinuses, there is chances for the spreading. That is why this pterygoid venous plexus, clinically, it is very, very important. Next, what are the connections? That is, the plexus connects with the facial vein via the deep facial vein, and with the cavernous sinus to the veins that they pass through the sphenoidal emissary foramen, foramina ovale or foramina lacerum. I think already Madam discussed about all these foramens, that is in the base of the skull, and it's a deep temporal tributaries often connected with the tributaries of the anterior diploic and middle meningeal veins. Because of all these connections, this plexus, that is pterygoid venous plexus, it is clinically, it is very, very important. Okay, these are all the things. Okay, next, what are things we discussed today? First, what is the type of the joint? That is what is the temporomandibular joint? It is a synovial type. What it is condylar variety of synovial joint. And what are the structures which are taking part in the formation of joint? That is first one is the superior articular surface. It is performed. It is participated. It is, you see, superior articular surface is formed by the, that is, articular eminence and mandibular fossa, and inferior articular surface is formed by head of the mandible, and in between these two there is a intra-articular disc. Intra-articular disc, it divides the joint cavity into two parts, that is supra-meniscal and infra-meniscal, or menisco-temporal and menisco-mandibular compartments. And what are the ligaments? That is, what are ligaments which are related with the temporomandibular joint? That is, first one is capsular ligament, next is the lateral ligament, sphenomandibular, stylomandibular, and articular disc, intra-articular disc. These are all the ligaments. And relations, that is, what are the medial relations, what are the lateral relations, what are the anterior and in front, or what are the relations of the behind. Okay, if you want to approach this temporomandibular joint for any clinical purpose, you must have an idea what are the structures which are having relation with the temporomandibular joint. Okay, that is why you must know what are the structures which are having relation with the temporomandibular joint. Next, what are the different muscles which are producing the different movements? What are the movements? That is depression, elevation, protrusion, retraction, side to side movements. These are all the movements possible at the temporomandibular joint. And what are the muscles responsible for each movement of the joint? Also we discussed. Next, what are the factors stabilizing the joint? That is bony prominences and ligaments and muscles. Next, what are the clinical aspects? That is a locked jaw and fracture of the mandible. And what is the temporomandibular joint syndrome? And what are the possible injuries of the this temporomandibular joint? And what is the importance of the intra-articular disc? And what is the displacement of the or dislocation of the temporomandibular joint? And next, what is the pterygoid venous plexus? What are the tributaries which are taking part in the formation of the pterygoid venous plexus? And what is the importance of the pterygoid venous plexus? All these things we discussed. Okay, thank you. We go through this one. If any doubt, we discuss later. Okay, thank you. Thank you.